Awareness Level, Part 3. We move from Level 2 to Level 3 in Part 2 of Awareness Levels, and today we'll look at what it takes to reach Level 4. If you have not seen Part 1 and Part 2 of Levels of Awareness, then you will have very little understanding of Part 3. It will be like reading the last chapter of a mystery book to see who done it. Was it the butler or was it the maid? As a person moves from Level 3 to Level 4, they are now able and willing. In the parable of the sower in Matthew 13, verses 8 and 9, it tells us about those who have reached Level 4. It says, "But some fell on good soil and produced a crop that was 30, 60, and even 100 times as much as he had planted." If you have ears, listen. Level 4 people have ears to hear and have the ability to take action. Proverbs 9:10 reminds us, "For the reverence and fear of God are basic to all wisdom. Knowing God results in every other kind of understanding." At this point, you are aware of your ignorance and are trusting God for your wisdom. James 1:5 says, "If any of you lack wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you." James 1:22 tells us to take action. "But be doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves." Some people are like sponges. They absorb all the knowledge, yet there is never any action taken to apply the knowledge. The people who reach Level 4 are those who wring out their sponge and demonstrate their faith through action. The difference between Level 3 and Level 4 is the willingness to take action and apply what you know. James 2, verses 17 and 18 goes on to say, "In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. But someone will say, 'You have faith, I have deeds. Show me your faith without deeds, and I will show you my faith by my deeds.'" Is there a conflict here with Ephesians 2, 8 and 9, where it says, "For it is by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not from yourselves, it's a gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast"? The answer is no. What James was talking about was if there is no action, it shows that there is no faith. Fourth level awareness requires far more than believing there is a God and having a head knowledge of who Jesus is and what he did to save the world. It requires action. What kind of action, you ask? What does Romans 10:9 and 10 say? "If you believe in your heart and confess with your mouth, you will be saved." We see here that there is faith in the heart and action from the mouth. Jesus said in Matthew 28:20, "Teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you." We are to tell others about who Jesus is and what he did. Faith and hope are the foundational cornerstones of level 4. Hebrews 11 tells us about faith. What is faith? It is the confident assurance that something we want is going to happen. It is the certainty that what we hope for is waiting for us even though we cannot see it up ahead. Who do we find in the Bible that are examples of level 4 awareness? In the 11th chapter of Hebrews, we find a list of level 4 people in the Old Testament who had faith and hope. Their lives give us examples of what we will face at this level. Your level of faith is demonstrated by your action during testing. Here are a few examples of the testing of faith that we find in the Bible. We find God tested Abraham's faith in Genesis 22:1. It says, "Later on, God tested Abraham's faith and obedience. 'Abraham,' God called. 'Yes, Lord,' he replied. The example here was Abraham's willingness to sacrifice his son, Isaac. Then there is the testing of the Israel nation. The Red Sea crossing in Exodus 14. The lack of water in Exodus 15. The lack of food in Exodus 16. And the report of the spies in the Promised Land in Numbers 13. The testing continues in Job 1, verses 12 and 13. God set the limits on Job's testing. We see in Job 13, verse 15, how Job responded to the testing. Will you trust God and be like Job? In the New Testament, we find James 1, verse 2, that tells us how we are to respond when events of testing enter our lives. It says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds." James goes on to tell us what will happen when the testing is complete in James 1, verse 4. "Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking in anything." Peter sums it up in 1 Peter 1, verse 7, where he says, "These trials are only to test your faith, to see whether or not it is strong and pure. It is being tested as fire tests gold and purifies it, and your faith is far more precious to God than mere gold. So if your faith remains strong after being tried in a test tube of fiery trials, it will bring you much praise and glory and honor on the day of his return." Just when you think you have arrived at the top of the level 4 curve, what happens? You find that there is another curve. Do you remember what 1 Corinthians 13:12 says? In the same way, we can see and understand only a little about God now, as if we were peering at his reflection in a poor mirror. But someday we're going to see him in his completeness, face to face. Now all that I know is hazy and blurred, but then I will see everything clearly, just as clearly as God sees into my heart right now. Those who have struggled to climb the learning curve of life and have arrived at level 4 have come to realize, our awareness of God is still quite limited. And yes, there is another level of awareness. The next level is face to face with Jesus. It's time for you to ask yourself this question. What is my level of awareness? Do I consider the Bible a myth? Am I willing to follow God's reconciliation plan for my life? Am I being a sponge, soaking up all the knowledge, yet unwilling to tell others about God's saving grace? Or have I taken action and demonstrated my faith through testing? Only you can evaluate where you are on the level of awareness. When you stand before God on Judgment Day, will there be anyone there to accuse you of not telling them about the good news? Your time on earth is short. How will you use the time that God has given you? You can waste it, or you can spend it wisely. Which will it be? Until you can come to the point where you are aware of your own ignorance, you'll be caught in that teenage spinning mind trap of thinking you know it all. What level are you on? What is your X factor at that level? If you are at level 4, is your X factor 1 or better? How well do you exhibit the Christian character qualities that Jesus talked about in Matthew 5? Thanks for listening.